the vanilla scent satiates the craving, because the craving for sugar is all about dopamine. The research shows it takes 66 days to break a habit that relates to health and wellness. A craving for sugar here and there is not really a big deal.
This is Catch-Ups in My Kitchen, the catch-up you need every week in order to look, feel and be the best version of yourself. Join me in my kitchen every week as I speak to a new guest about all things food, health and wellness. Whether it's a specialist in their field, an inspiring story, or just a big girly catch-up full of all the recommendations, tips and advice. In my kitchen, we talk about it all. Hey guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Catch-Ups in My Kitchen with me, Georgia Simmons, host of the podcast. In my kitchen this week, I am joined by Chris, the co-founder of Killa Vanilla, a brand and product to stop those sugar cravings and bad habits. If you're that person who has to have something sweet after a meal, or 3 p.m. comes and you're like, right, I need to pick me up, this is the episode for you. Chris and I talk about the kind of psychology behind sugar, why we crave things and how to stop cravings. And Killa Vanilla is that product which gives you the smell and satiety of the sweet treat without the sweet treat. This episode is fascinating. You guys are going to love it. Before we go and speak to Chris, I want to ask you guys for a really, really small favor. Please can you click that follow and subscribe button? It means the world for podcasts to have actual subscribers on the platforms, and only a really small % of you guys actually follow and subscribe. Getting that number higher means the world for the podcast. We can continue to grow and continue to have amazing conversations like these. Thank you so much in advance. Now let's go and join Chris in the kitchen. Chris, welcome to my kitchen. How are you?
I'm good on this rainy morning.
I know.
But had a good walk in, 50 minutes. Get the brain chemistry going, get the blood flowing.
Love it. Well, do you mind giving us a very quick elevator pitch, who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I'm Chris Huntley Gordon. I am the founder of Killa Vanilla, which is an indulgent food-based vanilla scent that reduces sugar cravings. And we do it through olfactory neuroscience, and we do it through habit change.
I love it. Honestly, when I spoke to you about this a couple of weeks ago now, I think, at the Health Summit, I was like, this is fascinating. The science to it, I get it, not seen anything else like it. So I'm really excited to get into it in more detail. Before we do, we have a quick fire round about all things food. So, which is your favourite restaurant in London?
Okay, so it depends. It changes, to be honest. So at the moment, there is this brilliant little Vietnamese place called Med Sala in Earl's Court, and I have been there 4 times in the last week and a half, and it's absolutely brilliant.
Ooh.
And you wouldn't know it was there. Actually, you got to obviously know what it is, but it's in a lower basement flat, or what would otherwise be a lower basement flat, and it's quite a way down this kind of residential street, so you wouldn't know it was there. So you only go there if you know about it. But the food is so fresh and delicious. And it's quite reasonable as well.
Love that. Good recommendation. Okay, what is one wellness brand or product that you personally can't live without?
Right. So I've always been into vitamin tablets. So as a teenager, I had something called bronchiectasis, which is where the cilia is a little dysfunctioned, and had pneumonia and pleurisy as a result of that. And so my dad was very keen on me to supplement my meals with multivitamins. So that was probably 14, 15. And ever since then, I've kept up the habit of having vitamin tablets. So now, obviously, the idea is to get all your nutrients from your main meals throughout the day. But I just feel like I'm on top of it, and I have all the requisite nutrients at any given time if I've got those vitamin tablets. So at the moment, I've got vitamin D, I've got a multivit, vitamin C, omega-3 and 6, and a magnesium.
Nice. Any brand in particular that you love?
So it's it's just Holland and Barrett, and I keep it
nice.
simple.
They've done really well with their own brand stuff.
Yeah, and do you know what? So the Holland and Barrett in Earls Court, the manager is absolutely brilliant. So he will take you round, or he will give you a walking tour and tell you what's good for you. He's got the intricate deep science, all the different products. I could go in with any kind of question and say, look, what do you recommend? And he's got it.
Love it.
So the service in there is just brilliant.
Love that. Okay, what is your hangover meal?
Okay. Well, I drink far less now than I used to. And it depends on the severity of the hangover.
Yeah.
And the hangover meal tends to be a good Indian, good curry in the evening on a Sunday. The best curry house, in my opinion, is Noor Jahan near Gloucester Road.
Okay. Haven't heard of it, haven't been.
Okay.
But that sounds good.
Okay, you got to go.
Okay.
And it's not just the food, but it's the ambiance. Again, it's the service. And it's a real institution, so it's been there for decades. But the food is just delicious.
Amazing. Okay, what's your favourite coffee shop?
Oh, do you know, it's really hard to get good coffee nowadays, honestly. I think so there's a little gem, a little Algerian place called Café de Coin at the bottom end of Earls Court, and they actually do the best coffee. They do the best Americano, and I've been meaning to ask them what beans they use.
Oh, wow.
Otherwise, Templeton Gardens is a new hotel.
Yes, I've been.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
I know the one.
Okay, and they do a good coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, they do a good, reliable coffee.
Nice.
And so this is a theme that's emerging now. The service is really good.
Yeah.
The staff were really friendly, and they do a local discount.
Nice.
So
that's good. Love that.
20% off.
Love that. Okay, which food for you is a complete no-no?
Which food is a complete no-no? Do you know what? There isn't a food that is a complete no-no. I don't think it's a good idea to demonize or cut out any kind of food. Mm-hmm. There are foods in the food system that I think, okay, this is not a good idea to eat it, but I wouldn't remove it.
Okay.
Because I think it's all about developing a healthy relationship with all kinds of food. And I guess we'll come on to this, but getting into a place where you're in control of your cravings, you really, to develop that control and that habit, you have to be okay with foods or whatever the food is that you're trying to eat less of. You kind of got to come to terms with it. And I think cutting anything out is typically if you go cold turkey, it won't work.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, there isn't a food which is a no-no. I'm trying to think of, I try and avoid foods high in added sugar, high in saturated fats. And I think with the latter, that does concern me because it's sort of more silent, the cumulative effect on the body and on the heart and on our arteries and that plaque building up in our arteries. And it's something you don't necessarily see, something you don't necessarily see symptoms of, not in the same way with sugar where, you have weight gain. So I've got to say there isn't a no-no.
Okay, that's
fair?
good.
Is
That's
that
very
fair?
fair. That's very fair and quite rare nowadays to have none, but it's good. Okay, and lastly, what is your favourite dish to cook at home?
Okay, so I'm not a huge cook at home. I keep it really simple, and really it wasn't so much out of choice, but I follow the Mediterranean diet, and so I have lots of plants, nuts and seeds, fruits with a sort of lower glycemic index. I love berries, oats, love oats, and a typical sort of lunch or dinner would be a salad. So we're talking beetroot, avocado, sweet peppers, radishes, gherkins, and then I would have, say, a mackerel or a tuna or eggs. And that, for me, is really the Mediterranean diet. And that, not because I consciously thought, right, I'm going to set out to follow the Mediterranean diet. It just kind of emerged that way.
Yeah.
And my mum and dad tend to follow that kind of diet. My dad will make these weekly big vegetable soups that will last the whole week.
Nice.
And I love watching that. I haven't actually got around to it myself. It is the plan.
It takes time though. A good soup, it sometimes can take time just to, I don't know, make everything and like from scratch and But when you have that in the fridge for the week, that must be so good. So good.
And it, I feel good.
Yeah.
And even little things like if I go and get a sandwich from the high street, from a normal chain, I've noticed that actually, I'm. This is quite nuanced, right? So I've been through many years of becoming in tune with my body, and again, that wasn't so much out of choice. It was to do with circumstances. It was dealing with, going all in on a business. It was dealing with anxiety. It was dealing with a whole host of things, and steadily in time, becoming so in tune with my body and things like having to remove stimulants over a period of time. And then I think I do have a sensitive constitution. Mm-hmm. But coming back to the original point is that if I go and get a sandwich from the high street or high street store, I can feel an achiness in my body. Mm-hmm. And I don't have that when I make a salad at home. Yeah. Which, by the way, is more affordable than a sandwich or a meal deal from, a typical
Completely. I completely agree. I agree. Love all that. Okay, now on to Killa Vanilla. Do you mind sharing what it is and how it works?
I'd love to. So Killa Vanilla, in itself is it's an indulgent vanilla scent. It's food grade and it's natural, and it's contained in a small inhaler. And when we're struggling for foods like sweets, cakes, biscuits, chocolates, high in added sugars, we take it out and we smell it on and off for 2 minutes. And that scent, the vanilla scent, satiates the craving, because the craving for sugar is all about dopamine. And so the dopamine satisfies the craving, but we can get a gentler dopamine hit from the vanilla scent. So we're satisfying the craving and we don't ingest the sugar, which, particularly when it is a habit, can be detrimental for our health and can lead to the obvious things like weight gain, but other health detriment. That's a whole plethora of things. So it's a vanilla scent in a discreet small inhaler, and it comes in a 3-month pack, because it's not just, so the technical fancy term for this is the olfactory neuroscience. What's happening in that moment with the craving and with the scent and the impact on the brain. But then the 3-month pack is all about dismantling the habit, because a craving for sugar here and there is not really a big deal. Our customers, and like myself, when I had an issue with sugar, got to a point, and why we actually created Killa Vanilla was because I was eating too much and I was having sugar when I didn't want it. This was actually a habit, and it was happening on a daily basis. And so what we have to do is that we have to break that habit.
This one simple thing has completely changed my life, and that is mouth taping. I have never been one to prioritize sleep, but in January I started mouth taping and my sleep and my productivity skyrocketed. The deep restorative sleep you get from mouth taping is completely insane. Nasal breathing is the way we should be breathing at night, and mouth taping really promotes this. I wanted to bring it to more people, so I started Healthy Habits to bring you a luxurious and aesthetic mouth tape that you can use every day and feel proud to use. If you're intrigued on the benefits or want to give mouth taping a go, this is your sign to do so. Click the link in the show notes and use the code CATCHUPS20 to try mouth tape today. I promise you will never sleep better, and just thank me later. Now let's get back to the episode.
And that's why we've got a 3-month pack, because the research shows it takes 66 days to break a habit that relates to health and wellness.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Quite a lot to unfold in the whole habit change piece.
Yeah.
And even in the sort of the olfactory neuroscience of scent and the impact on the brain. But at a higher level, it's scent plus habit change to deal with sugar cravings.
Now, I want to touch on the fact that the smell is really interesting, because when you first smell something sweet, like as you walk past a bakery, let's say I'm walking past Gale's, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want a coffee, or oh my gosh, I want a croissant. Mm-hmm. But then you explained to me that yes, but after a while, if you keep smelling it, It's a duration thing, isn't it? So it's like that 2 minutes is 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes for a reason. Like if you smell for the first 30 seconds, you'll be like, I really want it, I really want it, I really want it. And then you tip over the point where you're like, I don't want it anymore. I'm now satisfied. So what's that kind of the difference between those two?
Yeah, and you've hit the nail on the head. And the trick with momentary exposure to scent has been known for a long time, and I think perhaps only now that we're really beginning to understand what's happening. I mean, smell and olfaction and scent has been somewhat neglected for a long time and has only really come to the fore in the last, probably since the 90s. But basically it's called the priming effect. So when we get that lovely, carby, wafty smell, that deliciousness, and you think, right, I want it, it makes you want it, because there's a couple of things in there. Reward error, okay, so it's unexpected, that triggers dopamine. And we've secreted a little bit of dopamine at that point. We are yet to satiate the craving, which in turn is about satiating our need for dopamine. So we get that hit, and what's happening is that momentary exposure is priming the brain and it's initiating the craving. And that's why we call it the priming effect, because basically you're being primed for a purchase. So this has been examined and looked at, particularly very recently within the last 6 years. However, in that same bit of research, the guys examined elongating that exposure over 2 minutes for a minimum of 2 minutes, and the reverse happens. So over the period of 2 minutes, we are satiating our craving for the dopamine, because when we prolong that exposure, we are releasing more dopamine in the brain in the same way that we would when we actually ingest and eat and have the sensory experience of those foods.
It is so fascinating. I mean, I've seen videos on TikTok where people are like eating a salad and smelling chocolate. And like, it kind of reminds me a bit of that, because it's like there's so much to like sight, smell, and eating. Like I feel like it may have been on a blog article you guys wrote. It was about strawberries. And it was about like if you eat a red strawberry compared to a white strawberry, you'll think the red one tastes better than the white one, even if they taste the same, because of the visual element. And it's the same kind of like with smell and sight. Like if you're, it's so fascinating.
It's absolutely fascinating. And I've met with some of the top professors in the UK. There's a gentleman called Charles Spence, who is the head of experimental psychology at the University of Oxford. He has done decades worth of research, and I saw him last year. And we're also working with the UK's #1 academic specialist in this field of research, a guy called Dr. Lorenzo Stafford, and he published his book called Smell, Taste, Eat, The Role of Chemical Senses in Eating Behaviour. I digress somewhat, but relevant, because what you're describing is called cross-modal sensory effects and or cross-modal sensory perception. So this is where one of our senses, and we primarily have 5 senses. So we have touch, we have smell, we have taste, we have sight, and then we have auditory. Now these senses interact and influence one another. So the perfect example that you gave, a more red strawberry will taste sweeter and more intense. Another example is if you were to drink black coffee out of a white mug as opposed to a transparent mug, the visual dynamic of the black against the white, that pop through our sense of sight, will influence our sense of taste, and that coffee will taste richer and more intense and more bitter. And those are 2 examples of cross-modal sensory effects. But where the real innovation and the real genius has come in, and this is the researchers in the States, what they discovered was the compensation principle. So there's been an evolution to cross-modal sensory effects, which we've known about for a few decades, but only in the last 6 years have we discovered the compensation principle, which is where one sense can compensate for another sense. specifically with our sense of smell and our sense of taste. And this is because they come as a pair and they work as an engine. So the olfactory and the gustatory tracts, which are the technical terms for smell and taste, the receptors converge in the orbital frontal cortex, where there's this overlapping region where they create flavour perception. So smell and taste go hand in hand, and they have the most special relationship across all of our senses. So much so, we can use smell to compensate for taste. However, only with respect to food odours or food scent. So if you had a vanilla candle, which has a very domestic fragrance, see, a vanilla candle and the vanillin, which is the chemical compound of vanilla, isn't the same kind of vanillin that you would find that's added to foods.
Okay.
So vanilla has been paired with sugary goods for literally centuries. I don't know how much in the history you want to get into with the history.
Well, one of my questions was going to be why vanilla? Because,
Right.
you know, a food smell could be cocoa. It could have been coconut. It could have been strawberry. But why vanilla?
Yeah, great question. It's because vanilla has a totally ubiquitous role in sugary food and drinks. So, and it has a fascinating history. And if I get too much in history, tell me to pause or stop if it's not relevant. I'm just to start off with what vanilla actually is. So it's a plant, it's an orchid. Technically, it's a spice because it's used to flavour our foods. And it was first paired with chocolate in the 1500s. A century after that, it was desserts. A century after that, ice cream. A century after that, so now in the sort of mid to late 1800s, it was soft drinks. Back then, carbonated water, vanilla-flavoured syrup. So vanilla is paired with sugar.
Okay.
And the vanilla is not only an aroma, but it's actually a food substance. And because flavour and the chemosensation of flavour is smell and taste, but guess what? It's actually primarily smell, and it's more smell than taste. When we smell Killa Vanilla, our brain goes, this is sugar. And will release the dopamine in the way that it does when we actually eat sugar. So that is the sort of the intricate science behind how we can use specifically vanilla and food scent in that way to trigger the same dopamine release from processed and ultra-processed foods high in added sugar content, because of the historical relationship between vanilla and sugar, and also the fact that, because what Killa Vanilla is the specific common note found in sugary food and drinks, and it took us a year to find that common note.
Wow.
Because there's different kinds of vanilla, different kinds of vanillin. You know, you can have vanillin that's very sickly and caramelic. You can have vanillin that is kind of like soft ice cream. But there is a common note found that's actually added to foods, which is the Killa Vanilla. Wow. And because of the nature and the dynamic between smell and taste, making up flavour, it can make our brains think we've had sugar when we haven't.
That's so interesting. I didn't realise there were so many different tones of vanilla.
Yeah.
Also, what I find really fascinating, and I've thought about this more and more since kind of prepping to have you here, is when you shop in supermarkets, and actually I know this is the same with like fashion shops and clothes shops, but supermarkets in particular, they pump the smell of food in the store to make you buy more food or certain foods. And this is really interesting, the whole psychological aspect of shopping and smell. Like, I know that, some shops actually like pump a certain scent. I know Victoria's Secret did and Abercrombie did. And that smell is all to make you buy more. And in supermarkets particularly, they'll probably pump the kind of baked smell of like fresh bread or like that kind of smell around the store to then make you purchase more, which is another really interesting kind of like perspective on smell and your actions. Yeah.
So this is super interesting. And at the moment, it's big industry that's using scent in this way. And we're really a disruptor. So we can actually use food scent to help us counter, what's heavily marketed and advertised sugary foods, which are addictive. But it's so interesting because I do think smell generally is quite neglected, and it's in a niche space. And it's only really if you know about it, you can use it to your advantage, depending on what that advantage is. So for us, it's to help people to regain and reclaim control of their sugar cravings. But I think somewhat we have neglected smell and we've taken it for granted. And as I was saying earlier, it's only really in the 90s and a couple of neuroscientists discovered the genes that were responsible for olfactory receptions and receptors. And also the link now with neurodegenerative diseases and decline and olfactory impairment. So that has struck up interest because, is there anything more to that link and that correlation? And so this is a super interesting area, and particularly with COVID, which was in the grand scheme of things quite recent, in the last 5 years, the olfactory and impairment and the loss of smell coming with COVID. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that in light of the bigger industry using scent to their advantage, it's only a few select people that are doing it and using it. And I think something that we've overlooked is that, scent has an impact on our brain. Scent and our sense of smell is 3.5 billion years old. And it was essential to our survival. Smell it evolved before sight and hearing, right? But we have neglected it over time. But the point being is that it has deeply entrenched roots in our brain's circuitry, and particularly our reward circuitry. So, there are scents that are strongly linked to memory and emotion. And I have no doubt that there are certain stores that have actually examined the impacts of certain scents that propel purchase behaviour. I have no doubt, but you probably won't hear about that so much, in the same way that there isn't a lot of literature on the priming effect. But I think this is the thing that we love about Killa Vanilla, is that actually we can now use food scent for a genuinely good reason with good social impact and social outcomes. There's 4.5 million of us who are diabetic. There's just over 2 million who are pre-diabetic. 2/3 of our country are overweight. And it is because, namely, of our food, diet and lifestyle choices. So we can actually, this is where the innovation is that we can actually use part of that food in the form of scent to help us make healthier food choices.
Especially now where sugar is everywhere. And I tried in September to kind of do a no sugar stint. That's quite hard nowadays because sugar really is in everything.
Yeah.
But I think we have to kind of work out what sugar we're talking about here, because there's sugar in a strawberry, as we've mentioned, the fruit already, but also there's sugar in a piece of cake. And the sugars are very, very different. So I'd love to touch on when someone is just reaching for that habitual 3 p.m, I need that chocolate, I need that Haribo, I need that pick me up, versus when you actually do need that piece of chocolate. Because sometimes we need it. Sometimes I desperately want chocolate and that's what I need, and the smell is not going to hit it. I need the chocolate. But then you have these other times when, without you even realizing, you're reaching for that chocolate and you don't even necessarily need it. It's that habit. So let's talk about the difference between those two moments, because you're not here saying, let's ban sugar, we're not allowed to eat sugar. This product's for those who cannot break that 3 p.m. chocolate bar. And it's just there, they have their stack in their office, it's just there, and 3 p.m. hits and they are having it and they can't stop. Let's talk about the kind of the craving versus treating yourself.
And I just want to take it a step back as well, and thank you for highlighting and distinguishing there's a couple of things in this when it comes to sugar. So molecularly, sugar is sugar. There's no such thing as good or bad sugar. But it's more so about the foods in which the sugar sits. And you're absolutely right. It's a good idea to eat the fruits, because the fruits that contain naturally occurring sugars, they also contain vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fiber. And particularly the fibre will slow down the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream, and it contains the nutrients that allow us to thrive mentally and physically, right? So we're focused on added sugars. And when I talk about added sugars, we're talking about sucrose. So sucrose is a disaccharide, and it's a combination of two monosaccharides, so glucose and fructose, that make up sucrose. Now, all of those constituent parts exist in natural foods, but it's a good idea to eat those foods for all the reasons aforementioned. But when it comes to the likes of sweets and cakes and chocolate and biscuits, now, unfortunately, those foods don't serve us in a nutritional way. That said, if you want the chocolate, because you said when you want that chocolate bar, have the chocolate bar. Because we don't believe in suppressing hunger or suppressing appetite. We firmly believe if you're hungry, you should eat. And it all comes back to whole foods. If and where you can, whole foods, and for me particularly, I'm a big believer in high protein content, as it satiates us, great for muscle, great for sustaining muscle, and particularly fills us up and makes us feel fuller for longer. So it is about food choices. And when it comes to that moment, again, just to reiterate, if you want the sweet treat, have it. But there's a lot of us who get to a point where they think, I don't want this sweet treat, but I'm having it. And that's because they're giving in to the cravings that are getting more and more entrenched.
Yeah.
And the craving, and this is, it is amazing. It is incredible how there is very little literature out there on habits and habit change. But yet these micro habits and habits in general shape the outcomes of our lives, right? So to understand that habit, and let's use the example of you in the afternoon and you want the chocolate bar and you're working, right? So let's break that down. So there's 4 key elements to a habit loop. We've got the cue, or interchangeably the trigger. The craving kicks in. We then have the action, and that leads to the reward. And the reward is the release of dopamine. Dopamine, it's a neurotransmitter. It's a chemical that makes us feel good. Not only that, it reinforces a behaviour. So what we find is that with a lot of our customers, going for that chocolate bar in the middle of the afternoon is no longer a conscious decision. It's a subconscious action, which otherwise is known as a habit. But to really address that, you have to understand that habit loop and what's going on. So we can get into that.
Yeah, I'd love to go into the habit.
It's a very long answer.
No, I think I'd love to go into the habit part, because I also think there's a difference between if you're craving something and you don't satisfy that craving, you'll keep craving it, which is another thing.
Right.
So with your product, you are satisfying the craving because you're smelling the smell.
Yeah.
But like, for example, this is actually a real example. I was really craving on Sunday a hot chocolate. Was really craving it. Didn't have one. Monday, still thought about it. Still didn't have one. Yesterday, had one. Haven't thought about it since, but loved it. And like, that was great. Like, I needed it. I wanted it. Great. But I don't have a hot chocolate every day. It's not a habit. I just wanted that. And I've actually done some research into cravings and like what they mean in more detail in a minute. But like, sometimes you are needing that, and there's why to that in a minute. But like, sometimes you have like I have a square of chocolate after my meal. And that's just like, you've just told yourself you do that, but you don't actually need that. It's just now like a ritual and a habit. And I think that's just really, really interesting. Like, actually you can replace that. And like, I'd love to go into like how we break the habit in more detail, but sometimes you have that chocolate bar in the afternoon because you get up from your desk, you go somewhere, you have a break from your laptop, you chat to your colleague, you chat to your housemate, and there's so many more things that attach to that habit, but you link that habit to the chocolate bar. But actually, you could get up from your desk, go talk to your housemate, go talk to your colleague, have a glass of water and sit back down, and actually you've like satisfied your need without actually linking it to the food. So there's so much to it, but I'd love to go into like the kind of science behind breaking a habit, because I'm here trying to build people's healthy habits and like good habits. And I bet you they kind of take the same amount of time. Like you're saying it takes 66 days to break a bad habit.
Yeah.
It might even take 66 days to build a habit.
Yes.
So that's quite interesting.
Yes, and it's both. And I'll explain why. It is 66 days to build a healthy habit. But we can't technically extinguish a bad habit. You can only evolve yourself really out of the bad habit into a new positive one. And it all comes to finding that reward. And the reason why I say we can't technically extinguish a bad habit is because, let's look at, because I haven't quite really fully explained the cues and the triggers yet, because life is hard. Like, I don't believe life is designed to be easy. And also you touched on it around, I think where you were going with the principle of cravings and its difference from hunger, which I've also alluded to, is that with the craving, the preceding action, i.e. the cue and the trigger, tends to be non-hunger cues. So we're talking about mood, environment, time of day, most of which, I think about a lot of our customers, it's stress, it's boredom, facing a challenging task. And we are going to face these things every day of our lives. The question is how we deal with it. So once the cue and the trigger kicks in, so if you're at work, if you're at your office desk, okay, let's assume it's stress, and or to be fair, it could be boredom, right? You don't have enough work to do. You are seeking ultimately a means of alleviating those cues and triggers. And when you get a dopamine hit, i.e. the reward, you are making it a little bit easier to deal with those cues and triggers. The sugar and the chocolate bar is really a conduit in getting to the reward. And you're absolutely right. There's other ways of doing it. A Killa Vanilla, in our view, is, it's a demonstrated, proven way of doing it because of it's more than a close alignment. Killa Vanilla is a vanilla food scent with sugary food and drinks. It will give your brain the same reward that you're after, albeit the dopamine hit we estimate is kind of 35-50% less of a typical dopamine hit, a gentler dopamine hit deliberately so we can wean ourselves off the sugar. But what we're really seeking is that reward. And you're right, and there are different ways of getting there. And this is also why you can apply the habit loop to different addictive substances. And there is a debate around, is sugar addictive? Is food addictive? We know that, that narcotics and alcohol qualify as addictive substances. There's still a debate going on around sugar. So coming back to your point around the bad habit and breaking it, is that I say break just to make the concept easier to digest. But technically what we're actually doing is evolving ourselves out of the bad habit into another one which is more positive for us. So, and when I say we can't extinguish the habit, the bad habit, what it means is we have to play with those elements. So cues and triggers are the same. They have to be, because life is life. We're going to get a craving as a result of that. We're going to want a reward, and we have to give ourselves a reward of some kind. And therefore, the only thing left to play with, left as a lever, is the action. And so we replace the action of eating the chocolate, in our instance, with smelling Killa Vanilla, smelling it on and off for 2 minutes. We're not ingesting any of the sugar, particularly when we don't need to eat, and we don't need the sugar, right? So there are, I guess, you're right. There are other ways, and I know we must have read the same book. I'm assuming you're talking about The Power of Habit, because Charles Duhigg does talk about go and talk to your office colleague because you're looking for a distraction or another way of getting a little dopamine kick or activating that brain's reward circuitry, which we can get from interacting with our friends and with our colleagues, and getting that kind of momentary distraction to make the original cue and trigger easier to deal with. So, and again, the innovation for us lies in the food scent, in that nobody else is using food scent in this way at all, except for buying over a period of 30 seconds with bakeries to buy the sugary treats. But this is how we dismantle the bad habit. and evolve ourselves out of it. And the great news is that once you've done it, you can do it again.
Yeah.
And that's why your first tool for developing that good habit, breaking the bad one, is the keystone habit. And this is really where the magic is. Because once you've cracked it, and a lot of our customers, once they've cracked the bad habit and they're in control of their sugar cravings, they go on to do amazing and wonderful things that contribute to other areas of their life and health. It could be working on relationships. It could be, and I think this is the other thing. Sometimes I feel like we over-intellectualize health sometimes. And I'm also cognizant that Killa Vanilla it's actually quite complex science. The actual usage is deliberately very, very simple because we need something in that moment. We've got to deal with the craving when it strikes, and we smell it on off for 2 minutes. And it's designed to be deliberately simple because I think we need to keep it simple.
Yeah.
The science behind it is jam-packed and it's complex. It took us years and years and years to formulate and understand the research and find the right research, the cross-modal sensory compensation effect is a total new frontier in science. The point is, it's taken us many, many years. And the other point I'm trying to make is that we've got to keep it simple. So in terms of other habits that are really simple, journaling, pen and paper is all you need. And it is a way, and our customers have spoken about it, it's a way of really tapping in to their psycho-emotional state. It's a way of seeing trends and patterns with their lives. It's something that's been a huge tool for me in understanding what kind of stimulants have a mainly negative effect on my body and mind. And I was only able to do it tracking the trends and patterns, looking back through my journal and thinking, right, okay, putting it together like a jigsaw puzzle, that stuff is not good for me because this is how I'm feeling.
No, completely. I think it's so interesting, and I think what I love about Killa Vanilla is that you mentioned about sugar and addictiveness, but actually sugar's not good for you. There's actually no benefit to sugar apart from lifting mood. And like when I went through like all these different cravings that we get, for example, like chocolate, you might crave chocolate. Actually, you're not craving the sugar, you're probably low in magnesium. So maybe you should be looking into like, right, I need to take a magnesium supplement, back to our supplement conversation at the beginning of the episode. Like, you're clearly deficient in something. Another one is carbs. So you're craving like pasta. Okay, you're low in serotonin. So like then what? You need to look into what that is. So what do your cravings mean something? So sugar isn't good for you. Strawberries and bananas are good for you because like you say, they come with so many other nutrients, fiber, all the other nutrients, great. But like a Haribo hasn't got any benefit to you apart from lifting your mood. And if you want, so apparently sugar is lack of energy and stress. Okay, so let's dig into that. So Killa Vanilla is like satisfying your craving, but then it's like, okay, if I keep, am I in a habit, which then Killa Vanilla is breaking, but also how did I get to this habit? Clearly I'm stressed, right? How do I alleviate my stress? Or how do I boost my energy? Is it having a higher protein lunch? Is it having more carbs with my breakfast? There's so much more to it. So when I think about sugar, yes, we're not sitting here saying no one's allowed cake. If it's your birthday, happy days, have cake, whatever. But like sugar and sugary foods and ultra-processed sugary foods, there aren't benefits to it. There's no health benefit. There's like mood and uplifting and taste and all that on occasion is lovely. But what I think Killa Vanilla is doing so well is that you're not, if you just said you're not allowed to have it, you want it more. So you're giving you that smell, you're getting like the dopamine hit, as you mentioned, but without the nasty health benefits. And then by breaking that habit, you can then look into, right, now how am I feeling? Am I still, what does my craving actually mean? I think that's really interesting. When you're craving something, it's always because you're actually low in something else.
Okay, this is interesting. So I think we can, to keep things really simple with respect to the craving, we can split it into hunger cues and craving cues, because we don't believe in suppressing hunger, right? So if you are hungry, you should eat. But I guess a way of trying to understand, is this a craving or am I actually hungry is trying to be in tune with your body. So for instance, hunger is gradual and it will build over time. And you have physical sensations, is your stomach rumbling and growling? Could you eat anything, or are you after something very specific? And is it something that we call sensory specific satiety? We're trying to satiate a sensory cue, basically. So, basically what that means is, do you want chocolate, or could you eat anything right now? Because if you could eat anything right now, it's a greater likelihood you're hungry. So there's, sort of sensory specific cues in all of that. I think there are obvious cues. Say I was with my flatmate in the gym. He was working out really hard and he felt lightheaded. And he's like, look, can you get me a Lucozade right now? I need energy. I need sugar. I need something to start activating the brain. I'm feeling rubbish. So we have to be, and I appreciate this is really, really sensitive. We have to be sensitive to our cues, but also try to manage what our body's really trying to tell us, and also getting familiar with the preceding action to the craving. What's going on right now? Am I stressed? Am I bored? Is there something triggering me? And these can be all kinds of cues. This can be things like customers talking about driving home from work and they see a supermarket and they know what's inside the supermarket. It was the same for me. It was actually when I was struggling with sugar cravings and sugar binges, it was the visual cue. There's a couple of things going on there. A big one is the anticipation, because dopamine gets started in the anticipation. So way before we've even seen the sugary goods, say 5-10 minutes before, and we're thinking about it, our brain is already secreting little bits of dopamine. But that, and another classic habit loop, our customers, they've had dinner, they're on the couch and they're watching telly. So they've eaten and they're not hungry. And therefore this is a traditional habit that is a response to emotion and mood. And the brain is hardwired to seek out dopamine. And this isn't our fault, by the way, it goes all the way back to our ancestors. But what we're trying to do is extend the comfort, and we get that through sugary goods. And just the point about our ancestors, you see, this issue, I'm just working out whether I'm being dramatic in calling it a crisis around sugar.
I think it could be a crisis due to the fact of the amount of percentage of population that have got diabetes or are overweight.
In that context, it is a crisis.
Yeah, I say it completely is a crisis, especially if you look at children, the amount of children who've got diabetes, who are overweight, you see the programs. I definitely would say we are in a sugar crisis, and that's why I think this product is fantastic for that. My parents will kill me for saying this, but when I was younger, there was a period of time where they would have a Mars bar ice cream after every meal. Every evening meal, they would. Okay. They would.
Yeah.
After every evening meal, we laugh about it as a family now because they would not be hungry. Yeah. They would not want it, but it was a ritual. It was after dinner, they would have a Mars bar ice cream, and they will be so angry that I've said it out loud. But and that's when it's a habit. An apple would be fine, or what are you doing here? And another thing, slightly off topic but very much linked to the kind of habit, ritual, and the dopamine element. You mentioned seeing the supermarket already starts dropping, the kind of dopamine levels are starting because people have issues with purchasing on Amazon or TikTok, and it's that ka-ching moment that they like. Then they have I've seen videos of these shopaholics who've got piles of unopened packages. They don't want that. They don't even want the packages. They want the ka-ching moment and the money out the account and that moment of purchase. And it's the same thing with you're craving that dopamine hit of getting the treat, or seeing the supermarket, or seeing the McDonald's sign, or that's exciting you already, and the dopamine's happening. You don't even want the fries or whatever it is. It's that's irrelevant, but you end up having it, and then you've got all the negative effects that come with it, which lead to the obesity crisis and the lead to the diabetes.
100%.
So it's mad.
It is mad, and it's sad, because these are structures that are being used to our disadvantage and to big corporates' advantage. I mean, I actually think it's criminal. I really do. I mean, I sort of getting like philosophical now, but I do think life is about service, and I think life is about serving others. And I think the people, because there are people out there pushing the sugar agenda, and I guess it's not necessarily new. You know, the sugar industry, particularly when we're talking about sucrose, we're talking about table sugar and added sugars. You know, that it's been around for centuries as well, right? The issue is that there's been a proliferation basically from the 60s, and that is correlated with the obesity and diabetes crisis. But something really interesting, you mentioned the shopping. We can use the habit loop structure to explain what's happening, and the cha-ching is that high, that dopamine high, which is the reward, which is trying to satisfy the original cue or trigger. So if you take a deeper sort of introspection, what's going on at the moment, what's going on for me, particularly if it's sort of, you know, frequent compulsive purchasing, what is the underlying issue here? What am I actually trying to alleviate, right? And the brilliant news is that we can get our rewards in other ways.
Yeah, no, it is. The other thing that kind of springs to mind when you say about how sad it is when I believe, I was talking to my boyfriend about this morning because I was explaining what this conversation was going to be about. And you know, when you're kind of queuing for the tills and you have all the sweet stuff next to you, that's what I think is really, really bad. You're sat in a queue. You don't want to be in that queue. There's a queue. Yeah. But they cover the aisles with sweets and chocolate.
Yeah. So
when you're sat there and bored, you pop it in your basket. And that is terrible. However, I believe, and I might be wrong here, I believe that's changed due to a sugar tax or sugar regulation that was put in place.
Yeah.
That now means that you can't do that.
Yes.
So I think then like a way of like reducing, literally a physical way of reducing diabetes would be putting apples and bananas and almonds in the aisle next to the queue, next to the tills, rather than Haribo's and Cadbury. Yeah. Like it's literally like a simple swap would make such a difference.
Yeah. And you're right. So there has been recent changes. So now the sweet aisle or the sweets are less obvious. So they're tucked away in say the middle, but they're not as on show, which is helping. So, you know, that is a positive step. It's a small step. And you're right. And it's, you know, it's really, I think with health and with all of this, it is a process of self-discovery. You have to do the work. I think when I think about people who've overcome health challenges, they've had to do the work ultimately. And this is the thing with Killa Vanilla. It allows you to be self-autonomous. So it is the neurobiological tool to help you with those cravings, but you are using it and you are building the positive habit. You are using it in the moment. You're having the discipline of carrying it around with you at all times, and you're actually using it for the 2 minutes on and off, and you're using it for a 3-month period. So you are doing the work. And I think this is really important. And I think the thing that's really struck and resonates with me, you talk about sugary goods and then the bananas and the almonds, which are, well, this does all go back to our ancestors and this hard wiring for sugar, and particularly high sugar content, because, and this is all really ties into the fact that it's not really our fault.
No,
it's not really our fault, because in Paleolithic times, hundreds of thousands of years ago, the dopamine reward system developed as part of our neurobiological evolution to incentivize us to do certain things, primarily around sex and childcare, because life was simpler and it was about surviving and reproducing. And it also developed around consumption of certain foods. Back then, sugary goods were very scarce and had a lower content of sugar. But in real terms, what that meant was when we came across a bush full of berries, the brain had evolved in such a way to say, hey, you need to eat as much of this as you can, because what was happening biologically is that energy would be converted to fat to enhance our chances of survival with the long, harsh winters. So this is well documented. And so what that means for us now is that when we see a good high in sugar, particularly with the sort of the sexy marketing packaging, we want it. We don't get the same hit from almonds.
No, completely.
And so I think there's got to be a rationalization of, there has to be this rationalization. Okay, so what's the banana and what the almonds are going to do for me? How's this going to make me feel? And I think for me, because I do really enjoy eating well, and it's the idea that I am allowing my body and my mind to thrive optimally. I have been training 6 days a week. It's probably now 4 or 5 and giving myself more rest. My brain is going 100 miles an hour. I'm exerting my brain energy all the time. And so foods, I see it in the context of fuel. And so if you can look at food in that way, you are more likely to choose the bananas and the almonds over the sugary shit, excuse me.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But I do think you have to go through, only really you can do that.
You've got to be self-aware. It's being self-aware. And I think getting to the point of purchasing Killa Vanilla, you're there. If you're aware that this is a habit you can't break, you need help breaking it. Yeah. I mean, like you say, if you're looking into nutrition, you know what's good for you and what's not. You're not going to pick a Haribo when you need to pick a banana. Like, you know what's good and what's not. But that's not what's happening here. Like you say, it's a drug ultimately. It's that hit. You're not looking at it for sustenance. You're not looking at it from a nutritional perspective. It is a habit that you can't break. You started it from a deeper reason, from stress, boredom, whatever it was. And now you're leaning on this tool, which isn't actually benefiting you in any way. So Killa Vanilla's come in to nip it in the bud and change it, which is just makes complete sense. But it all comes from being self-aware, and you've got to sit with yourself and work out whether it's journaling, food diary of your day, what's happening in my day, how am I feeling as a result of these, what am I doing? And sometimes you don't even realize you do it. That's the worrying part. It's like when you have something in your house and someone comes in and goes, oh, I like that stool, and you're like, what? And you don't even see it because you're used to it. But it's like having that thing that you do consistently and you don't even realize you do it anymore, which is scary. But that's where Killa Vanilla comes in to be like, right, okay, we need to stop this now.
Yeah, and I think the key to health in general is we call it, as you know, the habit stacking rule. And I think good health comes from habits. And I think when we look at the broader equation, and I'm just going back to what our customers end up doing, I missed out the point on movement. We've had customers take on sports they've always wanted to do. We've had customers just incorporate simple things like walking, which, by the way, I think is the most underrated movement, and I think it's one of the best movements and the best things that we can do is walking. But that's a habit, and it's all habits, really. But once you get going, and we all have our own keystone habits. So for some, it will be the gym, and the gym anchors everything together, and then they'll be eating better, more mindful of what they put into their body, sleeping better, going to bed on time because they understand that actually the body needs to rest, the body needs to repair itself. So the gym in that instance is a keystone habit. And for some of our customers, it is Killa Vanilla, because it's very, very empowering when you develop that positive habit, because you think, well, I can actually roll this out for other things. And that's what habit stacking is. So that's the really exciting bit, is that once you've cracked your sugar habit with Killa Vanilla, actually, it's just the very beginning.
No, I love that. We're both on a mission to help people build healthier habits, which I love. I genuinely feel like we could talk about this all day. I think there's so much in this, but we have got a final question, which is, do you mind sharing what is in your bag?
Yes, and I had watched some of the shows, so I had seen this question, but I'd forgotten, right? So thankfully I did bring a bag.
Okay, good. I love it.
Okay, I've got a few things in here.
Okay, great.
So I've got our Killa Vanilla pack.
Love.
Just because you never know.
You never know.
When you might need to bring it out and talk about it. And so this is what it looks like on the inside.
I love it.
So
it takes 3 months to break
sticks.
a habit.
I've got some gym shorts.
Nice.
Lululemon.
Great.
And because I want to nip in a gym session after this.
Nice.
I've got 2 notepads actually.
I always have 2.
So I did and I highly recommend if you're interested in nutrition, Nutrition for Health. It's a digital course at Imperial College London, and this was my notepad for that. And if there's anything that I want to, because we naturally cover a lot of subjects as we have today, and I always like to be researching and studying. So this is my study book.
Nice. That's good.
I then have my daily notepad.
Nice.
I don't know how excited you are by this.
No, I have 2 notebooks. One's more of a diary. One's more of a business, like write everything down.
And then probably my favourite really. This is the legend, Dr. Lorenzo Stafford. So this was published last year. It's called Smell, Taste, Eat, the Role of Chemical Senses in Eating Behaviour. So
wow.
In the world and in Europe, this is at the forefront of research and literature that sits behind Killa Vanilla. So Dr. Lorenzo Stafford, he is a psychobiological psychologist and a professor in this very niche field of chemical senses and the role of eating behaviour. So he actually specialises, and he's got an article in here on olfaction and obesity.
Wow.
So this, in terms of what we've been speaking about today, in terms of the olfactory neuroscience, this is it.
Yeah.
And we are going deeper and deeper with Lorenzo. So we're starting a project. We've actually already started a project on a deeper level of research, building on this.
I love that.
And going deeper with the olfactory neuroscience. And obviously I have read it and I've taken notes, and it's very technical, but it's one of the best things on the planet.
I love that. That literally underpins the whole business.
Yeah. And there is a core research paper from the States that came out 6 years ago that's very important, that discovers the neuroscientific principle of the cross-modal sensory compensation effect. This is a broader address of that subject, and is really, really important because it's, Killa Vanilla is changing lives. And, we've had customers reverse their pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes with the product. And so the bit that excites me is the innovation and the science. So there's nobody else on the planet doing this, and particularly with the research and going deeper with the research. So we are the only people at the moment going deeper with what's already out there. But this is very foundational to what we're doing.
I love that. That is really, really interesting. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. This has been amazing. There's so much in this episode, but I feel like everyone listening could be like, oh my God, yeah. Like, we've all had that moment where we lean on something, and the science to back up what we all feel is amazing, and a product to also help us curb that craving and break that habit is also amazing. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you found that episode as fascinating as I did. Talking of fascinating, we are in for a treat next week, as we are going to be joined by Donna, who honestly is probably one of the healthiest people I know. We are going to be going into her lifestyle, her diet, and there is an abundance of healthy tips and advice in this episode, so you are not going to want to miss it. If you want to be alerted when the episode goes live, make sure you click that follow and subscribe button so you are notified next Tuesday. Thank you guys so much again, and see you next week.